The UFC and MMA in general is one of those sports that just seems heartless, cruel, and violent. But at the same time, there are some moments throughout UFC history, throughout MMA history, where every single one of us fans have paused and gone, I feel that. These moments got us in our feels, and today I am going to be ranking the top 10 most emotional moments in UFC history. This is my personal list, in my opinion, and it leans a little bit towards newer fans, because honestly, like, I wasn't a huge fan back in like the early days or 2012 or whatever, so this is probably within the last 10 years or so. But let me know in the comments if you agree with my list, and also if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, hitting the subscribe button. Let's jump right in. So I'm going to give a couple of honorable mentions first before I start the list. And one is when Sean Strickland did that interview and started getting emotional about the abuse he suffered as a child. I think a lot of us collectively, whether you like Strickland or you don't like Strickland, kind of looked at that and were like, yeah, you know, it sucks having a rough childhood. I know a lot of fans related to kind of what he went through, and he does put on this sort of macho thing, and he kind of does, you know, make fun of everyone. So this was a little bit, you know, the chicken coming home to roost, in my opinion. But at the same time, you know, nobody wants that for their kids. Nobody wants that for other people's kids. And so I think MMA fans as a whole felt that. But I'm not putting it on the list because I just don't think it is enough. But it deserves an honorable mention. Another honorable mention I wanted to touch on is probably Chael Sonnen, when he kind of goes to retire and he's reflecting on his dad and the promise he made to his dad that he was going to be champion one day, and the fact that he fell short and he wasn't able to fulfill that promise to his dad, and he's just talking about getting emotional about how he tried his best, he did the best that he could. And I think a lot of us have felt that, you know, we've made those commitments. Everybody wants to make their father proud, everything like that. But the thing is, right, like, I think most fathers don't necessarily care about the result. They care about the, you know, one thing you try to teach your kids, I'm a father myself, is that, you know, you want to do your best. You want to put in your best effort. And if you put in your best effort and you've given it everything you could have and you still fall short, like, there's nothing to be ashamed of, right? So that's another honorable mention for me as well. Now let's get into the rankings. Starting off at number 10, Thug Rose. When she head kicked Wei Li and won the strawweight belt, that was a pretty emotional moment, and I think all fans, whether you like Rose or not, even whether you like women's MMA or not, that was a pretty great moment for Rose, and that was a pretty great moment for fans, because right after that, Joe Rogan goes to interview her, she's in tears, and she's just repeating to herself, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best, right? And I think a lot of us can feel that, right? You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to put these the honorable mentions right next to number 10, but number 10 is Thug Rose, right? You know, a lot of us can feel that, right? The power of positivity, the power of positive thinking. I think fans, you know, just for a moment there, felt what Rose was feeling, and you know, really got behind her. And it was kind of sad too, because she beat Wei Li twice, right? And then there was that fight with Carla Esparza, where, like, that was the worst fight ever, and she lost her belt that way, and then she kind of fell off a little bit. But you know, she is, and she's fighting again this weekend, by the way. She's a badass. I think she could definitely make a run at the strawweight championship. I think she could go down and fight Wei Li again if she really wanted to. It just all depends on kind of, you know, where things go from there. I'm going to put this at number 9, was Brandon Moreno winning the belt for the first time. And the thing is, the fight before that, if you remember, he fought Davison Figueiredo. He was not supposed to win, right? He fought him to essentially a draw. They did a rematch. Brandon Moreno won the belt. But the story behind this is he basically got kicked out of the UFC. He made a promise to everyone. He said, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, I promise you this, I will be champion one day. And he fulfilled that promise to the world. And so just seeing him accomplish that goal was pretty incredible. And 1 year ago, I think today or maybe it was yesterday, he lost that belt to Pantoja in a split decision loss. A lot of people thought that he won that fight. And then recently it looked like he was kind of going through something with in his fight in Mexico City with Brandon Royval. He's never fought that way before, so something's going on. So it looks like he's taking a break right now. But in that moment, I think everybody collectively was on Brandon Moreno's side. Everybody collectively was like, wow, like, congratulations for accomplishing what you accomplished. Coming in at number 8, for me, I'm going to put the Korean Zombie's retirement fight. And the thing is, again, I wasn't around for the early days of the Korean Zombie's career. Didn't pay attention to him a lot, but I just felt the impact, not necessarily of the fight itself, but the lead up to the fight, his walkout, right? There was the song, Zombie, 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 when he's walking out. And I felt like fans, UFC fans collectively, for like the next week and a half, had that song stuck in their head, just thinking about the Korean Zombie and his last fight in the octagon. And the thing is, like, first of all, he was an entertaining fighter, not picky. He basically scrapped with just about anybody. Great energy in and out of the octagon. So I just think that that hit fans, and everybody kind of collectively felt Korean Zombie's retirement fight, and especially that lead up. So I'm putting that at number 8. Coming in at number 7, I'm gonna put. What am I gonna put here? I think I'm going to put Charles Oliveira's win. Charles Oliveira, when he finally won the belt, that was a pretty emotional moment for fans. Because once again, Charles Oliveira was like such a hot and cold fighter in the beginning of his career. Like win, lose, win, lose. And then his daughter was born and he went on a tear to the point where he became world champion. And he basically was beating everybody at the top, all the same people that Khabib beat. But he lost to Islam Makhachev, right? And he's such an entertaining fighter, such a likable guy that I think UFC fans collectively, because in that moment, I know a lot of people were cheering for Chandler, and in his title defenses, I know a lot of people were rooting for Poirier and Gaethje, very fan-favorite fighters. But, again, like, I think collectively as MMA fans, I know some of us can be dickheads, and, like, we can argue about which fighters we like, which fighters we don't, etc., etc. But I think in these moments, whether you're an Oliveira fan or not, whether you're a Moreno fan or not, whether you prefer the other guy, I think in these moments we can all take a beat and get in our feels and be like, you know what? I'm really happy for that guy. Sucks that my guy lost, but Charles Oliveira won over a ton of fans in that way. And frankly, a lot of people thought, a lot of people are saying he's done, but frankly, like, a lot of people are still saying he's number 2, right? A lot of people thought he won that fight at UFC 300 against Arman Tsarukyan. So, yeah, that was a pretty emotional moment for fans, I think. Coming in at number 6, I'm putting DC's retirement fight. And that was the fight, the trilogy fight between him and Stipe Miocic. It was a pretty good fight, lots of action. If I remember correctly, it was a while ago, of course. It was pretty back and forth in the beginning, but then DC suffered that crazy bad eye poke to the point where, like, he couldn't really compete for the last 2 rounds because he couldn't see. That's at least what he says, right? And so, but he didn't, want to call it. He wanted to keep fighting, etc., etc. And so that was kind of where I think all fans were kind of sad because like DC's such a jolly guy and such a likable guy. Like he was and a lot of people gave him hate back in the John Jones days and things like that. But I think towards the end of his career, like everybody, and even now, people appreciated what DC had done for the MMA space, for the MMA community, everything like that. So, he was such a likable guy, fan favorite. I think everybody felt emotional on behalf of DC there just because of the fact that it was his last fight. He wanted to put on his best performance he could, but that eye poke kind of hindered his ability to do that. And so that's why I'm putting that at number 6. Coming in at number 5, RIP Rumble. And look, I know a lot of you guys are going to put this higher, right? But Rumble's time was a little bit before my time as a fan, so that's why it's not quite as high for me. I think I only saw him fight maybe once or twice as a fan. So like, I didn't feel that nearly as much as a lot of you guys did. And, but it was one of those moments where collectively, MMA fans, regardless of whether you're a fan of him or not, regardless of who you support and who you don't, the MMA community was all kind of rest in peace, Rumble. Thank you for all the entertainment. Thank you for all the fights. Thank you for coming and giving it your best every single time you were in there. You were a scary dude. You hit the hardest. All these things. Everybody who faced him was coming out collectively. Even guys who didn't like him, they were all collectively saying great things about him. And so that was like a moment that put us all in our feels, I think. And I definitely would probably put that higher if I had, a little bit more behind watching Rumble fight. Coming in at number 4, I'm going to put the Usman head kick. And Usman is my favorite fighter right now. His reign was great. It was really dominant. A lot of guys thought he was boring and whatever, but he was like the right amount of entertaining, the right amount of active. He was so close to beating GSP records. He was so close to kind of coming up and having people say like, oh, you're the welterweight GOAT, right? It's still GSP, you know what I mean? But and he was winning that entire fight too. And then just in the last minute, Leon pulls off the Cinderella story head kick, which, by the way, I think this could be right next to it, right? Depending on your perspective, because I think all fans at that moment were like, oh shit, right? Like shocked at the downfall of Usman, and since then he hasn't won another fight. You know what I mean? But then at the same time, we were all kind of collectively, wow, like that was a pretty incredible achievement for Leon. And by the way, I don't like Leon. I am not a fan at all. I think he's a dirty fighter. I think he's a boring fighter, and I think he's super inactive. And he was that way before he got his title shot. You know what I mean? So I'm not a fan of Leon at all. But in that moment, I could be on his side and be like, you pulled off something incredible. You came in with this clutch head kick victory that will always be on your highlight reel. But that being said, Usman is my favorite fighter that is active today, or at least one of them. And, just seeing that end of his era, the end of the title reign, and especially looking back at it in retrospect, that was a tough one. Coming in at number 3, when Tony got molly-whopped by Justin Gaethje. And in the moment, it wasn't as sad. It was a brutal beating that, frankly, a lot of people thought in that fight, I think they thought it should have been, stopped earlier, because I don't think Tony won a round. I don't think he won an exchange. But the thing that makes this so sad is that he has not won a fight since. And this was in April of 2020. And we are now in July of 2024. And so in retrospect, seeing that this was the moment where Tony fell apart, right? And he had moments, right, where the old Tony came back, right? After that fight, he got dominated by Oliveira. He got dominated by Beneil Dariush, right? And then in his fight against Chandler, we started to see the old Tony coming out again, and then he gets head kicked again, and then since then, like, just nothing's gone right for Tony Ferguson. Losses to Bobby Green, lost to Paddy Pimblett. He's got his last fight coming up against Michael Chiesa. I think Dana White has said, like, he will not fight in the UFC again after this, whether it's a win, whether he wins or loses. Which that's probably a good thing. And the other thing about this that makes it really emotional for fans, I've heard some fan theories saying that, like, if Tony isn't fighting, he's going to commit suicide, right? Whether that's true or not, like, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope he can find a way out of this. But that's what a lot of fans have said. A lot of people have said is that, like, if Dana White cuts Tony, and especially if he can't get in with another organization, which frankly, like, if the PFL or Bellator or any of these organizations sign him, like, they should be ashamed of themselves. Because, like, he's just taken so much damage. But this is a number 3 for me. Like, I think everybody collectively, when that was happening to Tony, they were sad. And then, like, looking back on it in retrospect makes it even worse. So that's why it's a number 3. Number 2, for me, happened this past February. Happened this past February when Ilia Topuria KO'd Volk. And, like, once again, I think there's 2 sides to this, right? Like, I'm not an Ilia fan. I'm really not. But the fact that he called his shot and kind of, as they say, manifested this KO, like, you could put that as, emotional from that perspective. But I think fans, when they saw Volk just crumble, right? Because he had lost to Islam his last fight, right? But it was on short notice. And then he comes back and does this. A lot of people were like, this is way too soon, but it's Volk, right? Volk hasn't lost at 145 pounds ever. So, he can do it. He can come back. He can beat Ilia. But Ilia was stalking him the entire time. He picked the perfect shot and put his lights out. And, it's one of these things, like, Volk is taking his time to recover. But the question is, will his chin ever be the same again, right? 2 KO losses in a row. Like, So, yeah, I'm just thinking, like, fans as a collective look at this, and everybody was like, oh, man, poor Volk, right? Especially for a guy that, and he's so active, right? He was defending his belt, like, 2, maybe 3 times a year, right? And Ilia hasn't even defended the belt once since then. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that was a sad moment. And I think for me, number 1, in case you guys didn't know, I am a huge Khabib fan. And number 1 for me was when he hung up the gloves, his final fight, right? Because the whole story is that he and his father went on this journey together, right? Abdul Manap, they went on this journey together, and his father had died earlier that year from COVID, right? And so he was there for the first time without his father by his side. He made this promise to his mother that he's going to go back, he's going to do this for his father's sake, and then he's going to hang up his gloves. And this was also where I kind of became a Justin Gaethje fan. Because, like, right after, just such a class act. He went there, comforted Khabib. He was there saying, like, your dad would be really proud of everything you've accomplished in the UFC and in MMA. And, like, there's a lot of Khabib haters out there, but I think everybody, like, can humanize him in this moment where, A, it was his last fight, B, the issues with his father, and just the legacy he created in such a short amount of time, right? So this is my list. Do you guys agree? What do you think? And what would you put on there instead? Is there anything I missed? Let me know in the comments. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.